I think I'm just aware for some of our listeners that the Christianity that we're describing here might feel quite alien from what we see in practice from Christians around us. Quite often we can look at Christianity as being lots of traditions and and some Christians we know perhaps might be quite stern and quite strict. So why do you think that is? Why are we talking about here almost like a different type of Christianity to what we can often see around us?
Yeah, it's really important to talk about that, and for me, and I think for many others, it's a kind of an elephant in the room that what we're claiming and actually what we're living can sometimes be very different things, and that counts as much for me as I suspect it does all Christians to an extent. I think I'm going to explain why I don't think that has to be hypocrisy. Okay, it doesn't have to be hypocrisy when you're actually saying that, look, I'm broken. I haven't got this all right, but I know the guy who does have it all right, and that is God. And so the only major difference, I would say, ultimately base between someone who believes in Jesus and someone who doesn't believe in Jesus is that the person who does believe in Jesus is forgiven, right? And then they then go into a relationship with God where there are additional blessings. But actually, in terms, the only difference really is that they, at base, is that they've been forgiven by God and that they're included in the relationship, whereas someone who doesn't know God is not in that place. But it doesn't automatically, being a Christian doesn't make you a better person. That comes through a whole life of being formed and looking more at Jesus and letting him do that work, letting God do that work within you. And that is a life's work, and we don't get it right. And I think as the wider church, we need to be more open about that and say, look, just because you know God doesn't mean that you get it right all the time. It doesn't mean that all your the mess ups and bad stuff in your life just suddenly go away. But I do think we need to be more real about that. And that actually sometimes, many of us can still be difficult and cranky and not particularly kind and not particularly loving. But what we need to do, all of us need to do, is to keep looking to God and keep saying, look, it's actually not about me, it's about you doing your thing in me and allowing myself to be loved by God. So we don't get it right. And I think we're sorry as Christian people for the fact that we don't get it right. But actually what we're trying to do is keep looking to God and to be what we can't be.
Yeah, we're also around this table aware that we're also broken. And a work in progress, however spiritual all this, is this conversation, we're all in that place. And like you said, your question about traditions and things, it also depends on which city or town someone was raised in and what's the tradition of that town, and have they had any exposure to other teachings of the different Christian traditions. So if you go to some parts of India, Christianity has been in India for 1,900 years. And you go to some parts and they still have the caste system in church, but in rural parts. But that's also because that's all they've been exposed to. That's their world. They don't leave that area. And so they stay entrenched in that idea because of not so healthy teaching being passed down. So as much as it is a heart issue, it can sometimes be a problem of geography too, and location of why people stick to certain traditions and certain ways of thinking. This is so different to what I'm hearing on this podcast, what I've seen in this town. It also varies, I think, on that. My wife's from Hungary, and she grew up in the Reformed Church in her village there. It's very different to what we're discussing here right now. Obviously she's on the same page as what we're discussing here, but she sometimes talks about that background, which is completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's differences in how, as I think we were saying earlier, how we relate to God. So, for example, like there will be a very what we would call like a traditional service, like that might be held in the cathedral or sort of a more traditional church. That there will be some people who find that they can really talk to God well in that place and can really relate well to Him, whilst there will be other people who kind of go like, what are they smoking? Like that just sounds like absolutely disastrous. I wouldn't even go there. But actually, they would find something else, another type of service, another way of kind of talking with God more helpful. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's like one or other is better. It's just we're all different people, and we'd find that accessible. I think the thing that grates with people, particularly outside the church looking in, is when they see people trying to pretend that they are people and that they're perfect when they're not. And that is a kind of a hypocrisy that I'm not okay with. And I think an increasing number of us are not okay with as well. And we need to be more honest about.